Okay, so the one thing that you need to do before you start landscape painting is to make your painting about something. For example, I painted this scene here twice, one back in 2019 and one relatively recently. And I like the new one better because it's about something. Like I remember when I first painted the scene back in 2019, I felt like I painted the painting well and I got the colors and everything right, but just something about it I just didn't like. I'm like, why don't I like this? Like, why don't I think this is a good painting? And now I realize I didn't make any decisions on it. I just copied the photo as it was and I didn't make it about something. All right, I'm gonna interrupt this video for just 1 minute to let you know that Paint Week is coming back. Now, if you don't know what Paint Week is, it's something I did earlier this year. It was a whole lot of fun. I pretty much give out a free mini course throughout the week that ends with a student critique and Q&A session. There's also a private Facebook page for Paint Week where students can post their work and ask questions. You know, last Paint Week was a huge success. We got over 3,000 people to sign up. And I first created Paint Week to do what I always tell you to do at the end of my videos, which is go get painting. And I just wanted to make things as easy as possible for people to just start painting and build momentum. And last Paint Week, I asked everybody at the end, like, what do you want to work on next Paint Week? And so many people said landscape. So that's what we're going to be doing in this Paint Week. And we're going to be painting this landscape in particular. I'm going to walk you through the whole process from cropping the photo to doing a compositional drawing to doing an underpainting, do a block in, and then a final painting. I'm also gonna have demos in there on greens and edges to help you before going into the painting. And now for this Paint Week, on the last day, I'm actually gonna be doing a live Q&A and critique session, so you don't wanna miss that. Now, Paint Week is completely free. The link to sign up is in the description of this video. And once you sign up there, you'll be given access to the supply list for Paint Week. If you have any questions about Paint Week, ask those questions in the comment section of this video and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, back to the video. Now you're probably asking yourself, like, what do you mean make it about something? Do I need to put a backstory to my painting? No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is that you looked at the scene and you chose something to emphasize. This is probably the biggest and the first mistake all beginner landscape painters make. I made it for years and years and years. Is that you see a landscape and you see so many cool things about it and you want to try and put it all into the painting. And you try and showcase everything, which is normal. You're a painter. You see things and you're like, oh man, like I want to put that mountain in, I want to put that waterfall in, and that lake and those grass, and it's all so cool. I want to put it all in there. But the irony of it is that trying to fit it all in and trying to give every cool thing you see equal amount of attention is going to make your painting that much more boring. Now, I know it can be very overwhelming when you're standing in front of a scene or you're looking at a picture and you're seeing all these cool things that you want to put in it. So what I recommend you do is to just write out what you like about the landscape. For example, with this one, it's like, oh, like the ocean is really interesting and cool. I want to get that in there. Like, oh, the beach is really cool and there's some people on there and there's the breaking waves. Or these houses are really cool, like on these cliffs. I like these houses on these cliffs. Or, you know, oh, these distant mountains, like way in the distance, have a bunch of hills on them. Those are really cool too. So then what I do, once I write it all down, I choose my favorite one. And then I try to make my favorite one take up the most space on the canvas. If I like these houses on the cliffs, I would probably crop it like this. Or if I like these mountains in the distance, I might crop it like this. Now, I particularly liked the ocean, and so I wanted to crop it like this. I felt it was really interesting and gave good scale to the scene, like this really pulled back look. It made the houses very small, and I just thought it was very interesting to see so many houses on so many cliffs, and that was kind of like what I wanted to capture, was kind of like the vastness and the depth of this scene. You can see I did the exact opposite of this in the old painting. Every single element of the scene is kind of taking up the same amount of space. The beach is taking up the same amount of space as the ocean, as the foreground, as the mountains, as the houses on the cliff. Nothing is really being emphasized. Nobody's gonna look at that painting and think, oh, this painting is about the cliffs, or this painting is about the ocean. See, now that you know this, when you look at great paintings, you're gonna see this a lot. Like this Edgar Payne painting, for example, it's very clear he wanted to showcase and emphasize and make the painting about the mountains. Or this painting by Bill Farnsworth. You know, it's very clear he wanted it to be about the river. There's mountains in this scene, there's trees, there's rocks, but none of them are taking up as much space as this river. That was a decision he made to make the painting about something. If he would have included the same amount of trees and mountains and rocks as he did river, it wouldn't have been that interesting because everything would have gotten the same amount of attention. So once I've figured out what I want the painting to be about, I try and figure out the composition in small little thumbnail sketches. And what I'm doing here is I'm squinting my eyes and I'm blurring the reference to just see the big shapes. And I'm also not afraid to change these shapes. You know, that's one of the benefits of simplifying your scene into big shapes, is that it's easy to change those shapes or move those shapes. For example, in this one, I just didn't like how much of the foreground there was. I was like, this isn't very interesting to me. I want it to play a smaller role in this scene, so I made it smaller than it was, even in my cropped version of the photo. One of the best pieces of advice I can give you is don't completely rely on just cropping to get your composition. This took me a long time to figure out. I kept like trying to recrop things and crop it tighter and bigger, this or that. And cropping's good. It can help get you there, but most of the time you're gonna have to move things. So don't be afraid to move things if cropping it doesn't get the job fully done. All right, so once I have the scene broken down into big shapes, I want to assign these shapes a value. And I'm only going to use 3 values, a dark, a mid-tone, and a light. And just how I was talking about before with making the painting about something and making your favorite part of that painting take up the most space, I want to do a similar thing with my 3 values. The last thing I want is to have an equal amount of dark, mid-tone, and light. I want those to be as dynamic as possible, meaning as much different percentage taking up the canvas as possible. Now this normally takes a few tries. Like I have sketchbooks full of me just trying to like sketch out ideas and trying different combinations and different ways of putting the value shapes in. That's fine. It's going to take practice, and I highly recommend practicing this as much as possible. It's so important that this is actually the first thing that I do on my painting once I start painting. I draw it out, and using thin brown paint, I block out these value shapes to help keep me on track as I add color, because I know this is where it all starts. This is the foundation. If I lose this value composition, and if I stray from these values, the painting's not gonna work. So even when it comes time to add color, I'm still very concerned with the value. That's all I'm focusing on. I'm putting in flat color in the painting, just blocking out flat color shapes, mainly focusing on getting the values right. I'm trying to transfer my monochrome underpainting into a painting of flat color. All right, now if you're unsure about like what colors to use, if you understand the part of getting the values, but you're like, I don't know like what colors those are, that might take me like a lot of tries to get the right value of color. This is where having a little sketchbook like this is very important. Before any landscape painting, I try and figure out my colors here. It's a great, quick, fast way to test out colors and values and make sure you know what you're doing once you get to the painting. This is a notepad of craft paper, and I still use oil paints in it. One of the most important things I've learned from painting landscapes is that you really want to limit the amount of experimenting that you do on your final canvas. You know, you want to do all your experimenting and figuring things out in your small thumbnail sketch and in your color study. So once I start painting, I am making decisions off of my original idea. For example, since I chose such a pulled back view and these houses are so far away in the distance, I don't want to put a lot of detail in them. Putting detail into them and making them bright and have a high contrast and sharp edges is going to bring them forward, which is going to make them look weird because they're not close, they're far away. And this is where photos can trick you a lot. A photo is gonna have everything in focus and everything is gonna be sharp. Even these houses that are really far away, you're gonna be able to see all the details, but that doesn't mean that you should paint it that way. Too many people fall into the trap of trying to paint the way a camera sees instead of painting the way an eye sees. And they're very, very different. You know, an eye can only focus on one thing at a time. And so you need to keep that in mind while you're making decisions. And again, you're going to be making decisions off your initial idea. This is what I mean when I'm saying make your painting about something. When you choose that main idea of what you want it to be about, it's gonna make decisions like these a lot more clear. You're gonna know where you should be putting detail or where you should not be putting detail. You know, where should you be softening edges? You know, I want to soften edges in this mountain here with these houses. I want there to be soft edges to help sit these houses in the distance. You can see I definitely didn't do this in the first painting. I tried to put as much detail into these houses as possible. They're all crisp and clear, and the darks are really dark, the brights are really bright, and it just doesn't work. It's not working for the painting. Now, I see a lot of beginners, I mean, I used to do this too, think more detail will make your painting better. Or I can't tell you how many times I was like struggling with a painting and it wasn't working. And I thought, oh, like I can save this just by adding more and more detail. Oh, once I get the detail in, it'll look better. And that's never the case. Detail will never save your painting. But what will save your painting is making it about something, which is the first decision you need to make before you start painting. All right, if you like this video, then you also like this video here, where I give the landscape painting tip that was a total game changer for me. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.